My name is John McKernan, and I am married to Tracy because she hasn't kicked me out of the house. Friday will be 21 years, which is just amazing to me. Our son Trey is 16, uh, and you baptized him. I think what's kept me here is probably the more interesting story. The funny story is how I got to Alpharetta. I was playing golf and got paired up with Don, and had a really bad hole and was cussing, and Don was laughing in the cart. And I asked him, I said, what's so funny, Don? He says, well, you've made a mess of this hole, but people normally don't talk like that around me, John. And I said, well, why is that? He says, because of what I do for a living. And I said, what do you do for a living? I'm the senior pastor of Alpharetta Methodist Church. And I looked at him, I said, the fifth hole is going to be way better than the fourth. And Don met me where I was. He said, please don't. Please just be who you are. And a few years later, after Trey sang in the choir and did preschool and all that, Don invited me to a Bible study, and we were talking about how he was going to run it, and he was surprised I wasn't going to fight him on it. And I just looked at him and said, Don, how many Bible studies have you done in the time I've known you? And he was like, countless. I said, how many have you invited me to? He goes, point taken. And the true irony is, I lead that Bible study today. God's got a sense of humor. I think what I love about the church is you can just walk in. When I was growing up, um, I lived in a coal mining area of Alabama, and you had doctors and lawyers and their families, and you had coal mining families. And coal mining families would show up on Sundays in their dark blue jeans. This was before you could buy real blue jeans. So very dark blues, white press shirts. The daughters would have dresses that their mom made, very simple, but the best they had. And what I saw in the church that I was in was the folks that would just kind of do this and then not open up space on their pew for the folks that had walked in the door. I don't dress up when I go to church for that reason. I want, if somebody walks in just where they are, that's the best they can do that day. There's at least somebody else in shorts, maybe in a t-shirt, maybe in a Columbia shirt, whatever. Because where you are is where you are. It's where you start. And we do a better job of that than the church did when I was little. And I'm really comfortable with the relationships being more important than what we look like. I was forced to go to church. Um, didn't want to be there. I don't know that it was a thing against God. It was just what I heard in church was not real appealing. I heard you're going to hell, so I figured I might as well have fun. And there's a funny side to that. There's also a deadly serious side to that. That's what I heard. I don't think that's what was being said as I look back, but it is where I was at the time. It's what I heard. And, I ended up uh, drinking a lot, doing a lot of drugs as a kid, and ended up with a gun in my mouth. And um, it wasn't because I didn't believe in God. It was just if there was one, he didn't, he wouldn't want anything to do with me. And instead of pull the trigger, I said the only sincere prayer of my life to that point, and it was help me. And the door opened, and there have been people put in my path every day since. And we're talking 35 years later. Haven't used anything, haven't drank anything, and hopefully I've helped some people along the way find the same outcomes. But it was that simple prayer of help me, at a time when I can't say that it was Jesus. I can't say that I was going God. I was just, I knew it was God, but it just, where I was, the best I could do on that day. Well, I didn't pull the trigger, put the gun down. Um, I was in rehab at a time when rehab was insurance was real, rehabs were full. I was in that afternoon. Um, Found a sponsor, found people that cared, I have since made lifelong friends, but I wanted for nothing and needed everything. My roommate, not proud to say this, but my roommate was the blackest queen you could ever come across. Alan was a godsend, um, and I guess he decided that I was going to deal with how I felt about gay folks and how I felt about black folks. Being a guy from Alabama, we're going to deal with that today. Um, and Alan was one of my closest friends, and he died a horrible death from AIDS in the mid '90s. But I watched him touch so many lives just because he took a moment to care. And I think that's the tenet that Jesus kind of left us with. And I think that's where I started to transition from something to putting a name to it with a path to maybe think about. Not really to follow yet, but to think about. That path is interesting because I never sought to put a name to it. I never sought to put a moniker on it. It was just one step in front of the other until I got to a place where I went, oh. And I wasn't expected to be somewhere I couldn't be. I can only be where I am. And when I got to that place, it wasn't this white light moment. It was just a very comfortable, well, of course. You know, I had heard about it, I had seen it. If I'm honest about today, I think I see Jesus every day, whether it's in something you do or whether it's in something my son does or a friend does. I see Jesus. I hear Jesus every day. He just doesn't look like the guy in the picture. It's the person across from me who was put in my path to remind me, hey, I'm here. Yeah. Um, there was a time that question would scare me because I'd have to admit that I was paying attention, or that I believed, or maybe I was going to change what I was doing. But the first man that comes to mind is a guy named O.K. Sheffield, who spoke John as a 19-year-old scared kid and walked with me for the next 22 and a half years of my life, selflessly. Um, when we first met, in fact, he told me not to go to church. Okay, was one of the most devout people you've ever met. Well, instantly I was like, well, why don't you want me to go to church? And he goes, because you're not productive there. He said, what I want you to do is talk to 3 people a day about their relationship with God, whatever it is. And you can't put your opinions on it. That is not as easy as it sounds. I said, number one, because there weren't 3 people in my life that cared to talk to me at that point. I had to start forging relationships. But to hear somebody say something that you don't necessarily agree with, or that you want to tell them there's a better way, but it taught me to meet someone else, not just expect people to meet me where I am. It taught me to meet somebody where they are. Tom Johnston's the guy that just got it. He did. I never saw a selfish moment with Tom. All I saw was selfless. I never saw a angry moment with Tom. I saw gratitude. He just was a vessel that he said, God, put me in front of whomever I'm supposed to be and let me be of service. And he never sought to go, hey, look what I did today. Those 2 guys above all else, and there have been so many people along the way that were there for a second, some that were there for a minute, some that were there for weeks, months, years, whatever. But those 2 are the guys that helped me put down the angst that I had with there might be a God and his name might be Jesus. I don't know that there's any one moment. I think it's more for me. And I've got friends that have had that moment. But for me, it was just that realization on the look back. How could I not see it for so long? How could I not embrace it for so long? How could I not trust it? How could I not have faith in it? Um, how do I not want to be a part of it? The look back is so clear. It's just kind of hard to see right here in the middle of it. I heard about a friend of mine today who drank himself to death over the weekend. His struggle's over. I'm still here. Why me, not him? I can grab whichever side of that story I want to grab. His suffering's over. That's a good thing. My job's not done. It's really hard to see in those moments, but I have to believe my job's not done, whatever that is. Um, yeah, so for me, it's the look back. It wasn't this, yes. It was, how did I miss it? It so much more includes my boys in the Bible study now. Um, when Don started that Bible study, and when he left, there was a group of 8 to 12 that said, "We're not done," and I knew what that meant because I was the youngest one in the room. The kid was about to get picked on, um, but I wouldn't trade those guys for anything. They have openly shared things as we've gone through the New Testament and now going through the Old Testament, things that they never intended to share with one person, let alone a room full of guys. Um, I would not trade them for anything. And any given Thursday, God's in that room. And those guys are the vessels that say, "Hey, John, catch up." Or maybe it's, "Hey, Jimmy, catch up." Or maybe it's Mike, whoever it is. They're there and God is in that room. And to feel that, I never, ever thought I would say something like that without going, "Well, where are the white coats?" But God's in that room. And if you want to know why I stayed off Red Methodist, because God's in that building. And it's not just inside, it's outside that building too. It's neat. It's just a feel that I can't put a name on. I think my prayer life, I've gone from saying prayers to trying to hear them and trying to mean them. It's one thing to, you say, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot." Great. But if I slow down and live in that prayer, it it surmises that I don't have the serenity and only God can give it to me. It's not John can give it. Uh-uh. The serenity to accept the things I cannot change instead of fighting, clawing, all of that. My daily prayer is, let me see the person that you put in front of me today and give me the courage not to shrink from it. I think it's allowed me to have faith in that Trey will find his way. Didn't make him go to church like I did growing up. He came to me and said, "I want to go through confirmation." He's been in my Bible study. He knows what I do every Thursday. He knows all of this. And he'll ask, "What's going on with so and so? What's going on with this?" And I would just share it with him, not expecting him to be somewhere. And he sure did wind up at a place without a lot of baggage that I showed up with. And I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it for every kid, but it sure was the right way for this particular kid. It's an amazing thing to not have to have credit for it and not have to have it be my way, because his way's not my way. But God knows that, and God's got it. I just have to give him a chance. God likes broken. There's not a character in the Bible. There's not a character in my life, and there's certainly isn't a character on this couch that's not broken today, let alone recklessly broken when I showed up. The prodigal son is a great story until you live it. And you go, "Oh, that's what he meant. Got it. That was me." So you're enough. Just show up. And I think that's really hard when we're looking at our shoes and we can't look anybody in the eye, and we've gotten wherever we've gotten. It's really hard to go, really, seriously, just walk in. I don't care if you can stand. I don't care if you can sing. If you're sitting in the back, whatever, just show up. You will be amazed what happens if you just show up and are just open to something. Don't put a name on it yet if you can. If you can, great. But if you can't, just show up. My faith comes out in the moments, truthfully, that I don't expect. Seldom am I looking for, oh, there's the moment. Nope, nope. I totally botched that. Um, but my buddy Jim, um, uh, Jim Vernakis, he and I have a shared path, and I've got a friend who coaches my son's soccer team, and he's a vet, and he was going through um, some PTSD counseling because he didn't want to be a statistic. He didn't want to be part of the 22. And his counselor said, "Do you have anybody that's willing to hold you accountable, or that you'll let hold you accountable?" And he says, "Well, I've got these two guys." And he goes, "Well, you know what? The path they're on, that's where we got all this stuff. You stay close to them." And just watching what Kyle's been through over the past year, we were sitting down the other day, and I said, "Do you recognize how different today is versus a year ago?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you see how you helped your friend get into the program in Virginia? And when he was going to be that statistic, he called you and y'all got him back in that facility. And how's he doing today?" And I think it's that simple. What's been given to us, we have to give away. And we have to be present for those moments when it's there. And so for me, those are the moments. I don't have to look for them. I just have to show up and be present when that opportunity's in front of me. God does that. I don't. I don't think God meant for me to sit on a couch in my house by myself going, "God, you're awesome." And whether He's put people in my path that are further down the path than I am to help me get over a hump, or to look back with gratitude where I'm not and look at somebody and say, "It's okay. Come on, I know the way out." Those are the things. In the 12-step program I belong to, we say you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. So it's not like God shows up and says, "Here you go, you're done." No, there's more to do. And I've not found a broad spectrum, and this is no disrespect to what you do for a living, okay? I'm not the guy that can stand in front of a room. That's not my talent. Now, I can do it, yes. But my talent really is what we're doing right now. What are you going through? Set here, stays here. Just let it out. Trust me, there's nothing he hadn't heard. And let's walk from here. So it takes somebody sitting across from me for that to be effective. So the relationships to me that I didn't care at times in my life how bad I hurt you, no matter how much you cared about me. If you had something I needed, or something I wanted, or something I had to have to survive, and it was at your expense, it was going to, so be it. And it's so not who I want to be today. And it's so not who I am when I am just sitting across from somebody saying, "Hey, how's Brad?" And anytime we get together, that's the first thing I say to you, because it reminds me it's not about me. Why do I sit in front of church? To remind me I can't hide from God. It's as simple as that. Why are my prayers simple? Because if I do what I call a sanctuary prayer, it gets all about me, and that's not the point. The relationships are. There's a reason Jesus had disciples and why those relationships were so important to him. Because even he couldn't do it by himself. Why would I try? Years ago, I met a guy who was a self professed atheist. And I firmly believe if he had really been an atheist, he wouldn't have really cared. But I looked at him and I said, "You are the most spiritually conflicted atheist I've ever met." And that stopped him cold. And he said, "I am." And I looked at him and I said, "Okay, so it's not that you don't believe. It's what do we need to put down so that you can embrace believing?" And that turned into a lot of conversations and it turned into a great relationship. But it's frequently not that you don't believe, not that you don't know. It's daunting at times to think about admitting and committing, because once you admit, there is a commit, and yeah, I think you have to be courageous enough, if that's the right word, purposeful. You have to be courageous enough to have the conversation, but not have that conversation from a place that, by God, I'm right, because that's not where they are. If I want somebody to take a moment to figure out where they are and maybe find the peace that I found, the faith that I found, I got to give them the space to find it. I can't force them to be here when they're over there, but I can walk with them in those days when the light goes off. Those days, those are God shots. Those are the good days.